Do we don't have Justin? Well, it says recording, so I guess we can go ahead.
He disappeared there. He's probably checking the sign-in sheet. He
stepped out of the room for just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, do you want to go ahead and do your spiel?
I can. Just note that our meeting is being held in accordance with and in compliance with the emergency order of the governor, which was also confirmed by an attorney general's opinion that indicated during the pandemic, if organizations cannot meet in a safe manner, that we could meet in a Zoom or a video conference style meeting. So we are exercising that option tonight just to provide for the safety of the participants. And I will turn it back to you, Ms. Ashley.
Thank you, sir. All right, we will call this meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. And at this time,
Ms. Ashley, Justin told me to say that there was no public comment. He ducked his.
we put you to work. Huh?
No, I guess. He told me to say it.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, at this time, we will welcome everyone and ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you. And then item number 1 is review of the agenda, followed by item number 2, adoption of the agenda.
Ashley, I wonder if we might want to put the draft budget at the bottom and let our speakers go ahead and speak so they're not having to sit through all of that conversation.
I would be fine with that if everybody else is. Is that okay, Brian?
Yes, it's okay if you all want to adjust you can't change the content, but you can adjust the manner in which they're presented. So if you want to do that, if you have 3 members that wish to modify that, you can go ahead and do that.
I just respectfully ask Ms. Cecil, she was on earlier, to make sure that, I think she was going to let her engineer know that they weren't going to be first. Just make sure they're ready to go if we decide to change order.
We are ready. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Hi, I am Shanda Cecil with the City of Winchester. I'm the Stormwater Coordinator.
Hang on just a second, Ms. Cecil, because they still have to vote on it. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I've got 2. Is there a third?
I agree to move
All right,
the
there's Ms.
agenda.
Brenda. Okay, so we'll just move item number 3 to item number 5, and then we'll do, Sherry, do you want to do item number 4 is item number 3, and item 5 is 4? Is that okay?
Yeah, I just thought it might be nice to move our speakers up so that they didn't have to sit through what we were talking about with the budget.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Or, I guess that would be as amended.
I'll make the motion.
Who was that?
Sherry.
Megan first and I'll second.
Megan first. All right. Motion by Ms. Hendricks, second by Ms. Richardson. Okay, so that would put us to the new item number 3, which would be enrollment project and demographic report, Christy Bush.
Miss Ashley, do you want to do our mayor first? Or do you want me to go ahead?
We've got the board member appreciation is next.
Yeah, I just totally skipped over all that, didn't I, Paul? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead.
You thought he came just to lead the pledge tonight.
I did. I thought he just wanted to come and hang out with us tonight. Okay,
Well, I do.
all right. I'll
Um,
turn it over to the mayor.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I have a proclamation honoring the members of the Clark County Board of Education during School Board Recognition Month, January of 2021. Whereas our community values equality education is a vital step along the pathway to success for our children. And whereas Ashley Ritchie, Bill Talby, Brenda Considine, Sherry Richardson, and Megan Hendricks contribute greatly to this community through their service on the Clark County Board of Education. And whereas these decision makers are responsible for maintaining strong, effective budget oversight, high standards for employment, and a safe, well-managed set of school facilities. And whereas these board members are serving our community with integrity, honor, and commitment to our children's futures, and whereas January 2021 marks Kentucky's observation of their contributions through School Board Recognition Month. Therefore, I, Ed Bertner, Mayor Ed Bertner, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2021 throughout this community as School Board Recognition Month, and urge all citizens to honor Ashley Ritchie, Bill Talby, Brenda Considine, Sherry Richardson, and Megan Hendricks for their service. Signed and presented this 25th day of January 2021. I want to say that, as I've always said when I've had the opportunity to visit with the Board of Education, that our children were educated entirely in the Clark County school system. They received an outstanding education. They developed lifelong learning experiences with a lot of teachers and coaches and administrators in the system. We have always regarded that as a wonderful thing that our children were able to be educated in the Clark County school system. I thank you for your work, your hard work to do all the things that are necessary to be done in this very difficult period of time. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. To the board members, appreciate everything you do, and it's like the mayor said, it's always difficult, it always has been, but it's made even more difficult during these times for everybody. And, you know, we talk about the kids and the staff a lot, but board, it's especially tough on a board right now, getting through, managing through this. I have for each of you a certificate from KSBA. I've got those at the office. We also have a little goodie bag for each of you that we put together with some little goodies in it. I've got those at the office. The two new members, Brenda and Megan, your certificates and your KSBA ID cards are in that bag. I'll leave it up to you all as how you want to do it. I can put the bags in your mailbox at the back, but I'll be glad to tomorrow during the day just drop them off and set them on your porch and run if you want me to do that. Get them to you. That way you don't have to come into the office if you don't want. I'll be out and about at the schools. I don't mind a bit, me or someone else in the building just dropping them off at your house and leaving them on your porch for you. Arlene helps me put this together every year, and so I want to thank her for doing that. She did a good job of it again this year. So we've got those ready for you, and I'll have them at the building if you all would like, unless somebody just tells me something any different. I'll plan on getting those to you at either your workplace or at your homes tomorrow.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to request to be excused. There's something I have to do here shortly.
You go right ahead.
All right, thank you very much.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you. Thank you.
All right. Public comment. Do we have any public comments? No public comments? All right. So now we're back to Christy Bush, Enrollment Project and Demographic Report. Ms.
Thank you,
Bush.
Ms. Ashley. This is your first look for next month's meeting to discuss allocations with Alicia. This is normally done by an organization, I believe Dr. Bob's. Alicia asked if I thought our department would be able to reconstruct this to save about $4,000 to the district. So I told her we would give it a try. I think we've done a pretty good job. The narratives are a lot shorter. The graphs are the same. So if you would like to ask any questions or look through the 11 slides, the very first slide I'll say is dated on Thursday, the 21st. I will try to give you an update every time we have a board meeting, just so you can see a look at that particular time of the month or the week, so you can see our demographics there. How would you like me to proceed, Ashley? Do you all want to ask questions, or you want me to say a little snippet about each slide?
I think you can go ahead and do a little snippet of each, just a little bit, just kind of a rundown for our new members. I know it'd probably be really helpful. Okay,
Slide
with you,
number-
Brenda and Megan? Okay, they're nodding yes, so go ahead.
Slide number 2, this is a repeat of what you saw last week, just so you would get some information about the end of the first semester. Slide 3 is the first month of enrollment.
Ms. Bush? Ms. Bush?
Yes.
Just real quick, looks like the largest percentage, we had some big decreases in Campbell and Baker in that first semester from the start to the am I reading that correct, or is that from the time period, is it from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester, or from 2019, it's from the first semester last year to the first semester this year?
So you're looking at December the 31st last year versus December 31st of 2020. So 19 and 20.
Okay, all right, okay, I'm good, thank you.
Does that help? Okay.
Yep.
Your third slide is the first month enrollment. Your second one, your slide 4, I'm sorry, is the first 5-year enrollment. It's a trend where you can see from 2016 for 5 years and the decrease over that time period. Number 5, if you'll look at the highlighted areas, those are our seniors from second grade till their senior year, beginning with 2010 to current year. Live births are used to project our kindergarten. You'll see that there's going to project 387 on slide 6. That will be our projected kindergarten for this coming 2021 school year. Slide 7 is a trend for 3, 5, and 10, all the way to 2029-30. You'll see on slide 8 our exceptional children count. The last 2 slides are free and reduced per school, and then you'll see on slide 10 per year.
Ms. Bush, is the live births just counting births in Park County?
Yes, and as of June of 2020, for some reason, they're not going to have those numbers anymore. That is why you see that as an NA. We do not have that documentation from the census.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else I can do for you before you meet next month to talk about allocations due to enrollment with Alicia? Any graphs that I might have left out or you'd like to see differently?
No, but the losses are devastating.
We know right now that we've got a lot of staff, kids that aren't in school right now, and they've not been enrolled because of being virtual, and they've enrolled them in private schools and other places where they can get the daycare so that they're able to come to work. We know that, and I feel quite certain that those will probably follow us back when we come back in now, or shortly thereafter, I think. But now it is down some. We've had, in the last little bit, we've had some that have chose to go to just homeschool, because we're starting now to put the pressure on some attendance type things. So you're starting to see those a little bit. We've graduated. We had early graduation. We've graduated about 60. I told you last week we did 12 at Phoenix. We did close to 50 at GRC that had applied for early graduation and had all their credits in place and have already graduated. So that's taken some down there too. But there was
So,
about.
Paul, with the early graduation,
That's not going to show up on this early enrollment. That's not going to show up on enrollment. That's going to show up on the current numbers right now.
right, so the 390 of current 12th graders that started out as
Yeah,
full-time sickmen,
And
is that reflected in the 390, the 12 that have graduated, or not?
By January the 21st, probably not reflected in that, by them just graduating in the last week or so. I don't know that they would have made it all the way through. Christy might can tell me if they have. I just got the number at the high school today when I met with Mr. Bowen it was 49, I think, or 49 or 50 at the high school that had filed for early graduation. And I don't know that all of those would be reflected in this, but that's.
How many do we normally have that graduate?
You won't have as many. You'll have that many that's probably qualified to, but a lot of times they'll stay on that last semester and they'll just take some other courses, that's elective type courses. If they've worked into all the requirements, but where they, in this situation, they've worked in the requirements and they have chosen to go on and graduate. And the most of those are already enrolled this semester into college courses and already doing some college work. And I'm sure some of those may be actually working too. I don't know that we don't have those numbers yet, but according to Mr. Bowen, the majority of those that he graduated had already done an early enrollment into college this semester.
So we're not sure if they're hardship cases or if they were just on track to.
Just on track. Most of those are just on track. Now, Phoenix is a little different, but they have to meet the qualifications, even for the hardship to graduate, and all 12 of those had met. So some of those, and some of those, I don't have the exact numbers from Ellen. I don't know how many of those have, at this point, have chosen to go on and start college. I'm not sure on that at Phoenix.
So with our numbers decreasing, like Christy alluded to, do you use this information to adjust your staffing?
Certainly, exactly. And that's what'll come up at the next meeting, and you'll see these numbers is what we'll be using for staffing allocations. And if that staffing gets adjusted accordingly.
I have, Jennifer and I today, we're working on slide 1 to show you for next month what it would look like if all of those students had not went homeschool or private school due to COVID. So you'll be able to see the difference per school and per grade level, if that would help with any information that, you might want. But we'll be able to show you exactly how many per grade and per school left for that particular reason.
Yes, that would help.
Yeah, okay, we will do that for you. Is there anything else that you all would like?
Do you all have any more questions or?
No, I just think that, once again, needs to be addressed in some type of plan, because if you are looking at losing 191 students, and I know, Paul, you said that a lot of them are pulled because of daycare purposes, you really need to find out exactly how many of that 191 are teachers, students, because 191 loss is, I mean, you're talking devastation to a staffing allocation. I mean, scary. I've never seen numbers like this in 35 years. So,
Do you think it's because they're going to a private school or homeschool? What do we think?
When
What
they
do we
fill out-
contribute that to?
Like Mr. Christie did say, when they fill out the form to go either to homeschool or private school, you know, we see that because they have to ask permission and they want records to go either place. So there are quite a few who are very nervous about COVID. They want to stay safe and secure in their homes, you know, and that's something that, especially when they go homeschool, there's absolutely nothing we can do. When we get the form at central office, and I'm sure Mr. Holland did it before me, we always call and ask, is there something that we can do, you know, to change your mind? Is there something you need from us? And this year, a lot has just said COVID purposes. I will ask Jennifer if there's some way that we could do an ad hoc, because she's the expert at that, and see if we could determine, Miss Brenda, that 191 specifically that you're talking about over the years, you know, where they've went, if they've moved out of state, out of town, homeschool, private school. We'll try to put that perspective, you know, give some reasoning for that number.
could you, Christy, can you also let us know how many, what I want to compare is how many were homeschooled at the beginning of 2019 school year before COVID hit? Because I know we have a large homeschool population. So that would be very helpful to know what we had that we lost to homeschool in the previous year, and versus, you know, the 191 that's reflected in this presentation, to kind of give us an idea, because, you know, our goal is to get those students back.
Exactly. I think last meeting I had that on the consent item. I'm afraid if I go look for it right now, I'll be
No, that's
disconnected.
It's in the consent item, I have it, but that's always
Last-
helpful, because I don't think people realize how many home students we have within our county. It's a large population.
We have the equivalent of almost another elementary
Another
school.
elementary school, that's what I'm
About
thinking.
425. We're somewhere in that 424, 25 range. We were making a good headway on that pre-COVID, pulling those out. And we even started the year pulling some more of them out of homeschool and getting them on, because we were doing all virtual. But once
Right.
the all virtual started, they've gradually kind of gone back. And I, like I said, I do know that we've got a bunch of students right now that are in private schools or that type of thing, because teachers needed daycare. And we chose from the start, as did most other places, we because of COVID restrictions, we didn't allow any students to come in with their parents, with the teacher, to stay in the rooms and those kinds of things, because of the other people being in the building. I think we're getting closer and closer to getting kids back in right now. So hopefully it's going to be something we're talking about, these coming back in sooner than later.
Okay. Thank you, Christy. That was an eye-opening.
Well, if there's any way you'd like it done differently, please let us know and we'll change it, okay? Thank you all.
Okay. If nobody else has any questions or comments about that, we will go on to item number 4, consider approval of memorandum of agreement, which establishes a partnership with the city of Winchester to install a water retention basin located on the Campbell Junior High School property.
Okay, thank you. This is Shanda Cecil with the City of Winchester. I work in the Stormwater Department, and the City of Winchester gets a number of calls every year regarding flooding downstream of the project site. And in 2014, we completed a Lower Howards Creek Watershed Management Plan, and that plan identified 4 goals, one of which was to improve stormwater management to reduce flooding. So we partnered with Palmer Engineering, and they completed a model and study and determined that this project would help those people downstream. And I'm sure many of you are aware of the Vault Road flooding, but you're also probably more so aware of the Stony Brook area flooding. This project would help reduce some of those flooding issues for both areas. And I just wanted to point, I'm going to let Stephanie Blaine with Palmer Engineering talk to you about more of the technical aspects of the project, but I did want to mention that we would offer an educational component. We would be happy to come in annually and speak to the students at Campbell. There will be educational signage up if you approve the project. And we really hope this is a passive project that doesn't cause you a lot of headache, but it is a good project for the community, and it's a great educational opportunity. So with that, I'll give Stephanie, if you'll kind of fill everyone in on the technical features of the project.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Stephanie Blaine. I'm with Palmer Engineering. I've worked at Palmer for about the last 15 years and been involved in modeling in the Lower Howards Creek watershed for over 10 years. So this area is very near and dear to my heart. The project that Shanda brought to the board is a project that we have looked at to try to help reduce flooding, but also remove pollutants from the streams in that area. The area that we're looking at is about just under 1 acre in size, and would be located back, I believe, behind, right off the access road. There are some existing culverts there. So what we would intend to do would be to remove some of the existing soil. Right now, it's steep. The grade going down to the channel that's there already is pretty steep. So we would remove some of that, lay the slopes back, and allow from some different varied heights of the ground. And then our intent was to come in with native plantings and do sort of like a wildflower garden that hopefully would attract critters that could be studied by the biology class. We did plant native species that are native to Kentucky here. We've done a project like this similar in Lexington through a grant, and they have really enjoyed at their school going out there. I don't know if Shanda mentioned this, but we are intending to fund this through a 319 grant that's offered through the Kentucky Division of Water that is available only for non-point source projects. So those are projects that there's not one single issue. So it's a culmination of a bunch of water being released from different sources and helps both reduce flooding downstream and remove pollutants. So the pollutants will be removed through the native plants for the most part. They will allow uptake of the some of the extra nutrients in the water. From the studies I've done in this watershed, some of the major pollutants are phosphorus and nitrogen. So that's not really something that you think about as far as like E. coli or something, but it's what causes a lot of the algae in the stream. And so by using these native plants, it can help suck up those some of those pollutants, and also by slowing the water down, it allows the water to infiltrate into the ground and that way the pollutants will be cleaned out of the water through the infiltration process. It can also help remove the things that we think of as part of water quality as far as bacteria and sediments. I guess maybe too much technical information, but just sort of wanted to explain where we were coming from on that. The idea with the native plants is hopefully that it would be a low maintenance opportunity. Typically we plant this wildflower mix. We have done several projects in Lexington with the same mix that's been pretty successful. They only require mowing once or twice a year to just sort of keep down any woody debris, like, from any volunteer trees or any of that sort of thing from coming up. We typically line the edges of that with boulders, so it's very well defined, what's mowed and what's not mowed. I know that Shanda said there was some concern expressed about some of the native plantings, and you all have had issues with that at some of your other sites. So that is something we can talk about if that's the main concern. I guess, are there any specific questions or information that me and Shanda can provide for you?
So the area that you're talking about, is it in between the track and the little access road? Is that where you're thinking?
Yes, it's in between the track and the old area technology center.
So
But
it's
you get to it from the access road.
So it's kind of behind the track. It's that colder area that's pretty deep there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
one other thing.
go ahead, Shanda.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
I
Okay,
was
one
just
other
gonna
thing
say-
I just wanted to mention, is that this is at no cost to the Board of Education. We would be paying this entire bill. We just need the approval to do the project on your property. So, okay, sorry, Stephanie.
The other thing I was going to say about when you hear sort of detention, retention, the intent would be we have proposed to install an underdrain system so that the water would drain out of this area. If it doesn't infiltrate in the ground, it would drain out through a perforated pipe. So while it would drain out more slowly, but the idea is the water would stand no more than 24 to 48 hours. So it wouldn't be a permanent pool situation if there's any sort of safety concern or mosquito concern. I know that standing water sometimes brings up those issues.
So,
As far as the,
I'm sorry. Stephanie, you mentioned some areas in Lexington where you have done a similar project. Is there any way we could get photographs of those
yeah,
areas?
I don't know. I have a couple pulled up. I don't know if I'm able to like share them with you all now. I don't know if I have to have permission. I can try to see if it'll let me do this.
It's pulling
Yes.
up.
Is it showing?
Point.
Yes.
Okay. So this is an example project that we have done at the Picadome Golf Course in Lexington. We use the same grant source funding, the 319 grant, to come in there and create it's almost like a bioretention area there. So this is the type of native plantings that we would propose there. There's sort of a mix of native vegetation. As you can see, they sort of mow up to the edge of that. This is a little bit different application. It's actually on the golf course. But we met a lot of hesitation with the golf course staff when we were first proposing this project. And in the end, this was installed about 4 years ago. They actually let us come back out 2 summers ago and do a whole other larger section just because they'd gotten so many positive feedback from the users of the area. They enjoy the flowering plants. It used to just be a pretty degraded channel that had cut down and was eroding on the sides. So that's one example. Let me bring up the other one. There's also a project similar to this at Clays Mill Elementary School in Lexington. I don't have any photos of that one. Let me pull this up. Can everyone see this one? This is a slightly different application. It was another, the reason I showed this picture, I had these two on file. This was another 319 grant that we did. This was an existing 4-acre pond at Cross Keys Park in Lexington. We came in and installed, can you all see my pointer? Yes. We came in and installed these, this berm here to create what they call a sediment forebay, which will help clean out the water. We came in and installed all these native, this native vegetation along the surrounding areas of the pond. This area used to have really bad geese problem, where basically they just ripped up all the vegetation. There was lots of fecal matter everywhere. So we went in and cleaned it up using that and creating a wetland at the beginning. But as I mentioned before, the project we're proposing here would not have standing water in it. This was just an existing pond that we were modifying.
So Stephanie, you said this project would not have any standing water. So as much rain as we received today, there would be no standing water up there?
Let me rephrase that. There will be standing water for 24 to 48 hours. The intent would be that it would slowly infiltrate out through, will be like almost a detention structure you'd see on a traditional detention basin. And it would have a hole in it, so when the water got up to a certain level, it would flow out at a rate so that it wouldn't overtop the road. We wouldn't want to cause any problems with overtopping of the road, so there would be sort of a relief. Like today, I'm sure it would have gone through that hole. How deep could it actually get? Because here's my concern. I have a safety concern. And, it's at the middle school. I like to, get Mr. Christie and his take on it as well as the principal there at RDC. But, it wasn't too long ago, I had a middle school student, and I know how rambunctious they can be. And, are you proposing a fence around it? Are you, what kind of liability does the school district have after it's done? There's some questions there that I would like to hear from Mr. Thomas too on, what our liability would be if a kid maybe even comes in after, after school hours. Because, everybody over there in the Vault Road area, people walked over in and out of there all the time. How can we prevent that from happening? The water would be a maximum of 1.5 to 2 feet deep. So we're not talking about super deep water that would be gone in a maximum of 48 hours. If it ever got to be 2 feet, the goal is to have it removed at a rate of 1 inch per hour. So that as it, if it's raining really hard, obviously it'll fill up, but the rate is it won't be standing water that long. So the sort of the relief valve that we were talking about would not be any higher than 18 inches to 2 feet. And if there's a certain depth that you all would feel more comfortable with, we could try to look at that. But I understand your concern. We had not proposed a fence around it initially, just because of the access for the environmental education opportunities was sort of what we were thinking about. But I have to talk to Shanda, but I don't know if that's something that the city would consider including.
Well, the basin's already there, correct? And it does get water because that's what it was built for originally. And I think if I'm understanding you correctly, the reason that you would want to do this is to help the flooding of those people on going into Stony Brook and also Vault Road. These plants are going to help with that. That basin part is already there. They're not going to be digging anything that's any bigger, correct?
We will be excavating out additional material. Basically, where the slopes are so steep right now, we would plan to lay those backs to make the basin wider almost, so that it will contain some additional volume in there. We did do some modeling as far as not doing any additional excavation, but just put a different control structure on there. And we get about half of the amount of flooding reduction. So down in the Vault Court area, the area where we were analyzing specifically for this project, we see a full 1/2 foot reduction in the flood elevation. So that, they may not seem like that much, but if you think about somebody's yard taking, dropping 6 inches of how much water in vertical height, not horizontal, it's a pretty significant reduction in terms of what I've seen in my experience as far as flooding.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I could make a couple of observations, this is Brian Thomas. The first question I have, Ms. Blaine, is how much, you say you're going to, I was out there today because I knew this was going to be on when it was raining, and there was probably 2 inches of water in that culvert. I mean, there was no water in this area. How much soil are you planning on excavating? How many cubic yards?
The initial calculations we had done, it showed about 7,000 cubic yards of removal in that area over the area that's about an acre in size.
And then from a legal standpoint, I have a couple of things. I know
Okay.
Ms. Cecil said that it would not cost us anything. Under the memorandum of understanding, it indicated that the school system would be responsible for all the mowing and the landscaping. Now, Ms. Blaine, you indicated that you all were going to take care of the landscaping and the planting, but our memorandum of agreement says that it would be the school's responsibility to take care of that mowing or landscaping. So if we're taking care of the landscaping, that would be an expense to the county or to the school system.
Brian,
Then-
I can answer that. We will pay for the initial plantings, so they should be prolific enough where you shouldn't have to replant those. So, but you would be responsible for the mowing.
Okay, because it doesn't, the agreement does not show, it just says that you all will construct it, but it doesn't say that you all will be responsible for the initial planting or those expenditures.
Yeah, we can reword that.
And then there is a provision that I want the school to notice that if there is what's considered a breach, then the city would and has the ability under this agreement to seek recovery of all the funds that they have expended from the school board for any perceived or breach or violation of the of this agreement. However, there is nothing in this memorandum of understanding that allows the school to recover anything from the city in the event there's a breach by them. And then I would point out paragraphs H. There's not supposed to be any money of the school going in, but it says that the city may audit or review all documentation of records of the grantee relating to this agreement pursuant to, and it doesn't list what that's pursuant to. And then paragraph I says that they have this memorandum would grant them access to any books, documents, papers, records, or other evidence which are directly pertinent to this contract for the purpose of a financial audit. Well, if we're not spending any money, there shouldn't be any
Brian?
provisions to that.
When I sent this to you guys, it was a draft, and I had highlighted that just to say, I'm not sure why this is in here. And this is a draft. I was hoping to get some feedback from you guys regarding this before the meeting, but our attorney looked over it and agreed that paragraph I does not need to be in there. And it looks like paragraph H doesn't need to be in there. But you're right, we would need to add something that holds you guys, doesn't hold you all liable if there is a breach. And that can be worked out.
Those are all the comments I had. Thank you.
Shanda, do you already have your grant in the process?
No, we are awaiting your approval. If we don't have your approval, we can't apply for the grant. The grant deadline to apply is February 5th.
Well, I guess
And
we have preliminarily submitted the idea, and that they have invited us. Basically, what you do is you have to pre-apply for the process. That Shanda did that back in November or December, Shanda?
Right. And they liked the project enough to say, go ahead and submit a full application.
Yeah.
But we haven't been fully
the first
awarded
round.
yet.
Right.
Right.
So if we did approve it, when would you move on the project? Is that something you do this spring?
No, it would be summer of 2022.
Oh.
We could work on it as early as summer of this year. Yeah, that we could do that. But generally, they don't want us to start any projects until January of the following year after we've gotten the approval or we've been awarded the grant. And so we just, yeah. But I have talked to Division of Water, and they would be okay if we started in this summer of 2021, but they'd prefer 2022.
Most of these projects we are easiest to construct in summer because it's a little bit drier than in the spring, and then you get a chance for in the fall not to be so hot when you're ready to plant and finalize everything. You have more success in getting the vegetation to grow.
Paul, what's your opinion on this?
We've had one retention pond out at the high school, GRC. If you remember, there was one outside of where the gym now sits. We didn't have a good experience with it. 24 to 48 hours doesn't sound like a lot, but if there's water standing that long, and then even if the water goes down after 2 days, it's another 2 or 3 days before it dries out enough to get on it to do anything. It was a real problem for us at the high school, but it was closer to the building, and where it came into play was we were doing outdoor playground or playground out at high school, PE classes there on that bottom flat section there. And kids were in it, tracking mud, and it stayed muddy. We had a hard time keeping cattails out of it. They would take over, and you'd have to catch a dry enough time that you could get in there to do that. We never did get grass growing in it. We had a lot of cattails and some weeds, but there was never any planted vegetation that the cattails just kind of made their way in there and started. I'd like to know on the ditch line in the bottom there, about how far out on each side of the ditch line is the retention plan on going, or the dig and going back on each side of that ditch and goes down the middle of it? Can you tell me that?
Yeah, so we wouldn't plan to have, with the way we were going to design this is more of a natural, like almost like a rain garden type thing. So it wouldn't be like a traditional detention basin that has sort of just a flat bottom with sides that come back at 3 to 1. The intent would be to sort of like make it a more naturalized area. So what I would count the end of what we call the area where there might be wet, where our model shows potential water, would be 80 feet from the center of the ditch in both directions. So that's going to be varied levels of height deeper in the center. It won't, sort of be a 2 foot deep, going up with 3 to 1s at the sides. I can't recall what the pond you're talking about at the high school was, but I'm guessing that it was probably like that based on your experience with it not drying out and having the excessive cattails.
I'd have to look, 80 to 85 feet from that ditch line. How close does that put you to the embankment on the track that goes around there, having to do something to connect in, to tie into that embankment on the track?
I'll have to look and I did not measure how far it was from the track.
And also on the other side of it, toward the vocational building over the maintenance technology building now, there's an old, and if Donald's on here, he can tell you what it is. There's a pit, and I don't know if it was septic or if it was water. I don't know what it was, but there's some sort of a pit that's in there. I don't know if this is going to come up far enough that any digging would get you into that. I wasn't sure if you're aware of that. I don't know the size of it exactly, but we need to, if this were to go further, we need to look at where that is. That could be a potential problem if you just get into the edge of it. I'm not sure how far away from the ditch line it is. And I'm kind of like Brian. I went out today, and with all the rain, I went last thing this afternoon, and I had water way more in my backyard back here from the ditch line coming out of back in behind Kroger's here than there was in that one. It wasn't even to the top of the inside that ditch there on our property. So I don't know how high up you're gonna come before you put an overflow, but if you're talking up to the road, it's gonna be more than 2 feet deep. That's a pretty deep, it goes down to that ditches. I can't imagine 2 feet, you having to work 80 or 85 feet away from that ditch line to hold 2 feet of water.
Well, it won't be the whole thing wouldn't be 2 feet deep. And during the main storm event, and we would detention somewhat like a detention basin. So it would be a very quick release during a storm event for that water to get out of there.
To get back out of the 2 feet.
During the high flooding events, there would be more than 2 feet of water. There just would be maximum of 18 inches to 2 feet to that relief hole. So there would be, instantaneously, normally that water is gone within 10 or 15 minutes of the heavy rain stopping though.
How big of a drain overflow is it going to have? And how does that overflow tie in on the other side to keep it from eroding out on the other side of it? Because I would think, I don't know how big of an overflow pipe you're talking about putting in to help get it back down to that 24 inches, but wherever that comes out, what keeps that from eroding out on the other side of the retention?
So we would connect it directly to those existing culverts that are there. We would put a sort of like a square rectangular structure on there that would have a hole that would allow water to slow in during the lower events, and then have a big grate.
Almost like a sanitary sewer
Yeah.
piece there, okay?
Yeah. So then you have a big grate on top. So on a big flow, water can go in quickly and fill up those pipes. But on lower events, it's really going to help more so in the lower events and the larger events. In the larger events, the people downstream aren't going to see as much improvement. But on the 25-year storm event is where they see the most improvement.
I don't know, how big did you say the overflow pipe would be coming off of it?
The overflow pipe was not actually even a pipe. There's a hole that's about 6 inches that water will come in sort of at a slower rate. And then once it builds up, it'll actually come in the grate. So almost like a drop box inlet, it'll be a large grate for it to come in and drop down into that structure and go through the existing culverts. We haven't done all the detailed modeling yet. Sometimes we'll come in and put in a weir. There's a lot of things you can do to sort of control that flow to make sure your water doesn't get higher than you want it to get.
And there's debris. You're
Huh?
aware there's debris that comes through that from up above the football field up coming out of what is it? Snowfall or whatever that is up there in the country club up that way. There's a lot of debris that comes down through there and makes its way down into there. So any kind of a grate, that's something that's going to have to be watched fairly closely to keep that from getting covered up.
Some of that because hopefully the grate won't come in that often, that some of that we've seen it settle out. I mean, it'd be more of a problem that it's going to set out in the basin as well, because those lower flows aren't going to get up there. You probably have to have a rain event up to, 2 inches to be able to get up in the topper part of it. Like, something similar to what we had today, maybe.
And I mentioned this when we met, but you all are aware that culvert there it's coming apart. I mean, we have to put stuff in there. There's holes big enough that a vehicle wheel can go through it on the top side of that surface of that connector street down through there. So there's some work probably going to need to be done on a culvert down there too that goes under that road. It's on the far side going on the subdivision side, on the Vault Road side of that culvert. It's coming apart there, and the asphalt is kind of sinking in, going through.
Well, I guess maybe I don't know if I'm misspeaking, but our intent was to not touch the culverts, to leave them sort of in their existing conditions. If it's something that, the school board or, would be interested in partnering with us and having the same contractor to replace those at the same time, I think that would probably be the best economy for all parties to do that. I don't know, did I speak out of turn, Shanda, or is?
No, that sounds correct.
So how many truckloads of dirt are we talking about? Because I'm not in construction. I don't know, cubic yards, cubic feet. It's all Greek to me, right? So
Yeah.
and what is your plans for all of that material? Is that something that if we decided to move forward, is that something that we could use in other areas of our district, if we need it?
Yes. I assume so. Typically, Shannon, is that okay? I mean, I don't want to commit you all to something, but typically, yes, I'm working with the Parks Department in Frankfurt on a very similar project there where we're moving, we're taking out excavating material to create something similar to this, and they're taking it to an area where they're going to build up some bleachers around a track. Shannon, I guess what's your thought on the soil?
Yes, Donald and Mr. Christie and I, we talked about that, and leaving it on site somewhere would be fine.
I mean, I think that'd be.
Well, I guess I was thinking, and I think, I don't know if Mr. Howard's on here or not, but, from RDC, but I don't know where we're at on, the athletic, complex on top of the hill there behind the old high school that there might be useful. I just have, what kind of legal possibilities or liabilities, Mr. Thomas, does this increase the district at all, or is it minimum?
Are you talking about for the work that they're going to do?
No, I'm talking about after the work, if, kids get in there, get hurt, and God forbid an accident happens. I mean, it just seems to me, an increase of liability for the district.
Well, while there
But
may
if it's
be
minimum, that's one thing. I just want to get your opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be I don't think the liability is going to increase any more than what it currently is.
Yeah, this is Mr. Howard. I'm on the call. Currently we have to manage the creek area down there anyway, and our students are not, I repeat, are not unsupervised at any time in that particular area because it is so far away from the school. I try to be a little proactive and send out the memorandum of agreement to the science staff, particularly 8th grade. It does fit within the curriculum with ecology, also human impact, and even natural disasters when you're talking about erosion and flooding. So we have used that creek in the past, frankly, to take students down there, but again, they're always supervised. My biggest concern wasn't so much the academic gain, because I think it would be a significant academic gain when you're adding native plants and you can study flooding and erosion and like I said, just general ecology. With 8th grade curriculum, it was more so the liability or even coming up, losing the track, losing that big side, or even back flooding to the football field. So if those things are mitigated, then I don't have any other particular questions unless you guys do for me.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. So is there any concern for any damage to the track, to the existing field, to the road going down to the field house with this project?
No, we will, as part of when we do the detailed design, model all that information. We have done preliminary models that is what we based our grant application on so far. So we're not showing any impact to the building, the track, backwater into the football field. It would all just be sort of contained in that area. Honestly, in my opinion, it might be a little bit more stable than it is currently now. When I've been down there, the existing stream that's there has some erosion in it at times, depending upon what's especially in the winter months. Sometimes you'll see the bare dirt. The hope would be to try to get some plants growing on that so that you would take care of some of that without creating any further cutting of the slopes.
So Stephanie, when I first saw this, I was against it, but if we can, I believe the educational piece of it could benefit, the 8th grade class. And if we could work, you could work, your attorneys could work with Mr. Thomas on, putting some structure into the agreement that protects us as a district, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, I'm sure that what Shanda said, that the city's attorneys, I'm only really involved on the engineering side of it, but I'm sure, Shanda, you can get the city's attorneys correct to work with them.
Yes, I will be glad to. I can work on that first thing in the morning.
I think this project would help us be a good neighbor to our people on Bott Road, because I know they're having flooding issues there. And I think if it could help them, that would make us be a good neighbor to them, in addition to the educational part.
Paul,
And
what
sometimes
is your
Sort of
recommendation?
projects, because they seem relatively small in what they can do. And I know it's always scary to be the first one to step out, but I really do think it's a good first step in helping change some of the flooding in the community. That, you know, if you all installed one and then we can install one and, you know, get a neighborhood to install one, like you can, it's a, you know, someone's got to be the first one. So if it's something you all would consider, I really do think it would be a good thing for the community.
So just one quick question. What, during the project, is it going to increase the flooding potential of Vault Road though? Is it?
No, it won't change it during during the project.
Okay.
Construct it during exactly how we phase it. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll set up sometimes during when they're majorly in the stream channel, they'll set up like a pump around. So the very beginning of it, they'll put up sort of like sandbags and pump the water around if it's flowing. Most of the time on something of this size of a drainage area, you can get a dry enough period during the summer where you don't have to do that. But you'll always have a pump on hand in case there, you know, you hit up one of those pop-up events where you need to take care of the water without, because there's also a concern, you know, you have all this open soil. You don't want the water to just rush through there and then create all this sediment downstream. So to try to have measures in place to prevent that from happening. Not that the contractor always does it like we ask them to, but.
Paul, what's your recommendation?
Well, I'm kind of in the same boat I think that Bill was earlier. I wasn't too keen on this at all, just because of my past experience at high school. You know, we were getting the same thing, and I think we're already responsible for a lot less water on Lower Howards Creek because of the way the high school was with the retention ponds and the drainage systems and the impervious concrete that was got out there and everything else. I think we've already been a good neighbor up to this point. So this is additional. I just worry about the difficulty of maintaining it. The pictures you had, if you can get it looking like that, that's okay. It looks like a good place for the kids to play at football games. So I'm worried about football games when there isn't adult supervision of kids. Now, you know, and you've got something, if it happens to be, we had rains like we've had this afternoon and there's 2 foot of water there, and we got a football game at the middle school that starts at 6 o'clock and there's 2 foot of water, I worry about kids that are there. So that's a concern. And I just, if it can be planted and maintained in a way that we can continue to maintain it, I probably can support it. I'm just leery of what I've seen in the past. My only experience with the retention pond wasn't pleasant. And I know our native grasses, when I came here, and the comment about the critters and everything, that sounds good for science class, but the neighbors and the people don't like it when you do something to grounds that brings in critters. They don't like that. Because we had the entire front of Shearer, all that hill out there was all done in native grasses and native trees. And there was every kind of animal you can imagine in there, that coyotes, foxes, you know, everything in there. And even I can remember the calls of people complaining about seeing wildlife going in and out of it. So I don't want it to get so big and so out of control, something to go in there that would cause something like that. And if we just mowed up to the edge of it, that's all we could do, because you can't get a mower in it. And it stayed, at the high school, that one stayed soft enough just about all the time, unless you had an extended dry period, that you couldn't get a mower in there. Everything had to be done by hand. If you could get in there with boots on and wade out into it to pull stuff. And the there'll be some maintenance to it because like you said, the trees that come up on their own from the seeds that come down and start to grow, so there's going to be some maintenance on it. It's going to be some additional maintenance. It'll be more maintenance for us than just mowing it. But the pictures you had looks good. If we can get to that, and you all are okay with it being there, I just 80 feet out each side of that ditch line. I'd just like to see some more how that's going to be tapered off and what that's going to look like. I'm a little bit concerned about the big rocks that's going to come in to line it. That's going to prevent us from doing any kind of mowing on the inside because you can't get past the rocks. So that might talk about the design that we might need to have a conversation about as we get a little further down the road if it goes this way.
Mr. Christie, could we possibly leave some of the boulders out so that wide enough so that a mower can get in there? And also, we would entertain the idea of a fence, although kids jump fences. I don't know if that would help that much, but we could entertain that idea.
I'll present this. This might help a little bit. I just pulled this up. This is a very rough graphic. I apologize for that, but this is the area that was intended to have water on the 100-year storm event. So that's the limits. It would not be a straight up from there. That's just the area that would be flooded at the 100-year event. So that's like 100-year, 24-hour storm. So theoretically, it happens once every 100 years if it rains. I think this is around 7 inches of rain is what it would cause. So that's a pretty high volume.
We've had 6 here in the last year or two. We've had 6 inches.
I know.
I've
done a lot of modeling on Lower Howard's Creek, and every time I say that about this watershed, I'm like, oh, right. I don't know, it's probably been 10 years ago. We were modeling down by the Stony Brook area, and of course we had a 100-year, 6-hour storm come through right during that time. So.
There's a water culvert, and it's up around that. There's the flagpole. I don't know where, it's hard to see on there if the flagpole shows up, but that's where that pit is, that concrete. It's up around there. So I don't know how high in the 100-year, if you'd have to move that or not. It's not something I don't think that we use anymore, but it's there. It's something to be aware of.
Pull up
It's on the water.
actual, is it this up here?
No, go back. You can see a little white line right there. Keep going straight up now. In that dry looking area right there,
Okay.
It's around in there on the bottom side of that. It's right to the right of or to the left of where your cursor is there. That white line you see is the flagpole. It's just below it.
Okay.
Other way. I think it's below on the bottom side of the flagpole, I think. In that kind of dry looking area is where that pit is. So that may be something to be aware of when if we move forward and they start to dig, that may be something to be aware of. Could be a big hole to fill.
Yeah, so I'll go out there and look at it the next time. I should be over in the area actually on Thursday this week, so I'll go and take a look at it then.
I've got a question. If we vote on this and give you approval to where you can apply for the grant, like your plan's kind of not set in stone. We can just work and find something that satisfies everybody. Really, all you're asking for right now is approval to go ahead and do it, and then we can work out the specifics really later.
Yeah, our intent.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
I was just going to say, Megan, that sounds right. We can work out the details on the memorandum. We can work out the fence details, where the boulders are placed, all those type things.
So really, we've probably discussed everything that we can. We just probably need to vote, right?
Yes, we need to vote.
Okay.
Okay, with that being said, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement of a partnership with the City of Winchester to install a water retention basin located at Campbell Junior High.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Megan, you gotta come on camera to vote.
What, I'm sorry?
You have to be on camera to vote. Isn't that correct, Brian? Okay, there she is. Never mind. Sorry.
You're okay.
All right, motion by Ms. Richardson, second by Ms. Hendricks. All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I will work on that memorandum of agreement first thing in the morning and get that. Do you want me to just send it via email, Brian and Mr. Christie, Donald?
Yeah, if you want to send an email, just make sure you include Bill Dykeman on it so that we can all be on the same email thread.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay,
Hey, Stephanie,
thank you.
just one other question. As we get further down, like what Ms. Hendricks said, I'm assuming that at some point there'd be more of a drawing, a picture of what it was going to look like that we can all agree to. So
Yeah.
that I look forward to that. Be
Yeah,
kind
well,
of nice to see what it would look at.
Once we get a little bit, once we get the grant approved, it's sort of, we don't want to do too much work. We want to do enough to know that it's going to be a viable project, because it is a large undertaking. We are applying for the grant, but the city of Winchester has to match 40%, so they have a lot of skin in the game. So it's a 60-40 grant. So, you know, they are putting a decent amount to that, including our fees to do the design. So once we hopefully get the award of the grant, we'll definitely get you all involved. And if any of you all would want to be involved as sort of as the brainstorming as we start looking at any preliminary ideas as far as, you know, the principal, if your science teacher has specific species or something as far as native plants that you would like to see there, I did put a healthy budget for that in there just because that's my favorite part of these projects is that to try to make them visually appealing as well as help the environment.
No, we would absolutely be interested in being part of that and building it together. Or myself, like science department chair, probably Robbie Surgeon.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
there-
sounds great.
some
We'll
of
make
the-
sure we get with you.
Yes. Thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Yes, we will.
Okay, now going to item number 5, review and approval of the 2021-2022 draft budget. Ms. Ellis.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen, so we'll see how this goes. Let's see. Yeah, not seeing the tab I want to share. Be patient with me. Might have to call Justin. I don't understand why it's not showing me what I want, guys. I'm sorry. Thought it would be easier if I could show you the documents and walk through them with you versus just trying to speak. Help me, Justin. So present. I was trying to do just the tab, but I guess do a window.
Is it an Excel file?
It's this big PDF thing. This big thing. I want to be able to share this.
I would just do your entire screen to start with, see if you can find it.
Ah.
Pick that.
All right. Maybe.
Ask if they can see it.
Can you all see the PowerPoint that says draft budget? Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I've tried a different route this year, just with all the conversations we have had this past year and just a lot of the unknowns that have occurred with COVID and just changes, and just being a deficient budget for a couple of years now, and obviously being tasked with having to figure out where to make some adjustments. So we have this draft budget always includes only your funds 1, your capital funds, your debt, and your 51 food service account. At this time, in January, in the middle of the school year, we do not know for next year what our grant awards will be. We do not find those out until April, May, sometimes July and August. It just depends on how those get handed down to us. Fund 22 and 25 are school funds. Those are budgeted as they are deposited into the account. So we just roll those budgets over every year from where those accounts sit. Fund 360 is only budgeted on the year that the project is initiated. So those are not included in this budget. So just some considerations on the revenue side, so you know where we stand with our general fund, Fund 1 revenues is, we are estimating that property values will go up 1.5%. In the last 4 years that I've been putting a budget together, it has always gone up at least that much money, if not more. It's typically been around the 2, sometimes 3%, but conservatively saying 1.5% at this point for our estimations. KDE has told us that they will be funding our SEEK on our 2018-19 numbers. So this is what 18-19 was in our ADA, at-risk, home hospital, LEP. That is what our SEEK will be funded on for next school year. Obviously, that is not necessarily what our numbers will be, but that is what the funding source will be. So that is, at least the funding is the sound side, and we don't have to worry about this year's numbers plummeting as we just saw due to the situation with COVID. That is kind of a safeguard they have put in for us for funding for districts. They will fund us on our December 1, 2020 counts that just occurred with the exceptional child counts, which Christy had those in her PowerPoint. As far as we know right now, the base is still the $4,000 per pupil. I don't foresee that anything has changed in the budgeting cycle at this point for that. It still appears to be the $4,000. It's little tricky, just, so we kind of talked last time about how the state kind of swapped out some of our SEEK dollars they had this bucket of CARES Act money that had to get spent by December 31st. And so one way they passed that on to the districts was through the SEEK allocation. So we are dollar for dollar getting our entire SEEK allocation for this current school year that we sit in. However, this $949,524 was actually given to us in the form of a state grant. So it looks like on the general fund, our SEEK dollars are down that amount of money, and then we have a state grant that then adds together for our total SEEK allocation. So when you're looking at the working budget in this presentation, that 949 has been pulled out because I had to move it over to the state grant funding in Fund 2. And so it looks like our revenue for SEEK, when you compare the 2 school years, goes up this 693,000, almost 694,000. But in reality, when you take into consideration that $949,000 grant, we actually are going to be decreasing our SEEK $255,000, almost $256,000 for next school year. And that has a lot to do with your local property tax increase. So anytime you increase your local property tax dollars, your state funding SEEK dollars go down. That is a direct correlation of how that SEEK calculation works. And that is all on this document that was provided in the packet for you. I try to provide this every time just so you can see how that SEEK calculation all flushes out all the different parts and pieces. So you've got our tax assessment up there where we're projecting the 1.5% increase. We're leaving our ADA at the 2018-19 funding because that's what we've been told to do. And so as you filter all these pieces down through here, and you can see here's this grant that I was just talking to you about, that adjustment for that state grant. It's been adjusted in the formula to looking like on our budget, we have 15.7 million in SEEK on general fund. When really we have over 16 million, it's just part of it is in that grant. But when you jump back up this year and putting it all back in the general fund, it's looking like we're increasing almost 700,000. So I just want to point that out. We're not really increasing SEEK. I just want that to not be confusing. Are there any questions on how all that falls out? That's kind of the revenue sources for our general fund, which is also summarized in this document that I attached. And it kind of gives my reasoning to the side. So I did our working budget where we stand, our draft budget suggestions, what those differences are, and then this is the reasoning behind those. A lot of that is being conservative on our historical average spend for the last 3 years. And then a lot of it is driven by that property tax and SEEK calculation. So also in your packet is that projection of how we project out our property tax dollars. So all these documents were in your packet for review, but I just wanted to kind of pop them up and make sure you all knew which documents to look at for which. Are there any questions on the revenue side of how we're funding general fund or changes that are being made?
So, I just want to make sure, last year we included in the initial budget a property tax increase, which increased our shortfall when the board didn't pass it. This year we didn't include that. Is that correct? In case same thing happens.
I
Okay.
budgeted this 63.7 is our current tax rate. So I am budgeting that we are going to stay at our current tax rate. And I didn't even do projections at this point to even try to make an estimation of what, if we increased our tax rate, what those property dollars would be. I just figured current situation, where we stand, COVID, the community, it would probably be best just to budget on keeping our same tax rate right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good conservative view at the moment. And, it's still early to decide that, so.
Yes. January is very hard to present a budget. There's so much limited knowledge at this point to give you all, but we try our best with the pieces we have right now. So that's the revenue side. If everybody's okay, we'll move on to the expenditure side. Just a quick scenario of what you'll hear me talk about when we're trying to compare that budget excess or deficiency and talking contingency and all of that. So you have your total revenues, but when you take your beginning balance out of that, that's what we're calling our reoccurring receipts. So those are the things that we plan on bringing in every single year, not counting what we roll over. So this is very important to keep in mind when we then talk about our reoccurring expenses. You never want to spend reoccurring dollars that you don't have reoccurring revenues to support those. So you do not want to have a budget that you're spending your beginning balance or your contingency. And you'll see as we go through here, we're not a budgeted balance because of a budgeted balanced budget. I get my words confused, you all, sorry. Because of that. So right now, this is where the reoccurring revenues are sitting. We're right at 50 million if you take off our beginning balance. And the reoccurring expenditures, same total expenditures line matches the total revenues, but when you take off that contingency piece that we don't have budgeted out to spend somewhere, we're calling it our savings account contingency, we're at 50,681,000. Now, if we flip back to our revenues, we're at just right at 50 million. So our recurring expense budget is over our revenues for the year. and that, I've got my slides out of order, so I apologize for that. But you see right here, here's those total receipts, total expenditures of the reoccurring dollars, not one-time expenditures, things that we plan on spending on operations and salaries and things that are going to be spent every year. We are 660,000 still deficient. You can see this, our working budget's 1.8. So, I mean, I've gone through here and made as many cuts as I can absolutely cut to say that we can still sustain operations. And we're still this much money. So the only place that this 660,000 can come from is salaries, one of our major reoccurring expenditures. And so that's what we've been talking about with the staffing allocation and been seeing where our numbers sit with enrollment is that's a consideration we have to have going forward that we're going to talk about next month. Just to back up for a minute and just hit on contingency of where we're currently sitting at. So the contingency balance is funded percentage-wise. You determine that by looking at your total budget for your Fund 1 and your total budget for your 51 food service, pulling and then taking that contingency amount and dividing that. So we're at 7.4% right now with our contingency, which does exceed what used to be the 2% required statute. There is actually not a statute at the moment due to all the legislation that's been going through. Because of COVID, they've reduced that down to 0, actually, because a lot of districts have needed to go below that amount. We're fortunate to not be one of those districts. Any questions on how all of that has fallen out in the budgeting? And we can get into any particulars and expenses. You were also provided this document that lists out the changes that occurred.
Yeah, I just want to point out, and I know Mr. Christie may have had a conversation with you as well, Ms. Ellis, on the plan operations budget that has went from the 2000, I'm looking, and I might have these dates a little wrong. Let's say the 2017 budget of 1.2 to now almost 2.2 million. And, that's a 900,000 to almost $1 million increase over a very short period of time. I know that our SROs are coming out of that now, but that still seems to be a very large uptick compared to salaries in instruction and in other salaries in other areas that have not increased that substantial amount in other areas. And we can get into specifics. We can get into specifics next week. I just noticed that.
Plan and operations, and I tried to in this it's hard to kind of see right here, but I tried to kind of break out what departments are included in all of the different functions. And plan and operations includes all of our custodial staff, all of our SROs, and all of our maintenance staff. So that bucket of money is all of those areas. And as far as operations go, like, it is one of the largest expenses of the district. I mean, that is what operates our district on all the building levels as well. And I know you're talking specifically staff, but the 1.2 that you are referencing, I will say, was the budget cycle before I walked in the door and was from a previous finance officer. And I absolutely can make no summaries of how that person budgeted. I do know anytime you have a change in a person working a process, that sometimes things change. And even looking from that year's budget to the very next budget, when a whole lot of didn't change, the staffing salary area changed $300,000. And that is simply in, like I said, I looked at current staff employed at that moment, which had not changed from the prior year. Cannot tell you why the 300,000 jumped between the 2 years, because I don't know how the previous person budgeted. Not that anything was out of realm there. I just don't know what the reasoning was there. I just know my reasoning, starting with the 17-18 school year that I started projecting, was looking at the staff that was currently in that spot. I will tell you, just in my tenure here, that is an area we have added substantial amount of staff. There's been 16 employees between SROs, ground workers, custodial staff that has been added from my first year here in 17-18 school year to this current year we're sitting in right now. And that's growth of our property. I mean, we've added that huge athletic complex. We've saw the need of trying to have sub-custodial staff is not an easy thing to hire. It's really hard to get someone to come in and just be a sub-custodian. They want benefits. So, you know, that the thought pattern of how we've even staffed our district floating custodial staff has changed. So you've added some positions there. And then obviously, as the board knows, we've added, there were 2 SROs in that budgeting cycle of the 1.2. And so 8 have been added since then. We have 10 SROs on staff now. So that is a lot of people that have been added over the last 5 years, which is what's accounting for that large increase in salaries in that area.
I dropped for a few seconds, had to call back in, but I mean, I understand, just kind of want to point that out for the other board members as well. Just looked like just a big red, flag, when I first looked into it, and then understand, the additional head count that was added. I thought initially, Mr. Christie, we did have a grant for some of the SROs, but maybe I'm mistaken.
We do. It's our Safe Schools grant, and we still use some of that to do some of the security, gate security people, and we've had to use that for equipment. And then we also, the Safe Schools, we now use that. That's where a lot of our camera systems in the schools come from, and we update those, we upkeep those. Where we wasn't really using that before, our camera systems have gotten more and more complex, so we've had to go to that and taking that off the back of the general fund, where years past, several years back, we were able to maintain the very small, not real complicated camera systems that we had in the front foyers of some of our buildings, and that's about all we had. Now we're cameraed all the way through the building. So that grant, I think it's about 80.
It's right around 80,000.
Yeah. 80 to 82,000, somewhere in there is what the Safe Schools grant is, and that goes toward all the camera systems and upkeep of all some other safety issues that we deal with, railings and all those kinds of things. So now I think all of the actual SROs are coming out of general fund. There's none of them on that grant now.
Correct.
Okay.
Alicia?
Thank you.
What is the cost of 10 SROs on general fund?
I don't have that individually pulled out at the moment, but I can get that for you.
Okay, thank you. And also, it looks like in this document, nurses, but that can't be all the nurses included in this general fund document right here.
And this one that's on the screen?
Yes.
So what you're looking at as far as these general fund expenditure summaries is just the purchase order spending. So all of these up into this line right here, you're only seeing what we are spending through purchase orders. So when you drop down here to the total expenditures payroll, this is the payroll piece then added in.
Okay, the 55 million.
Yeah, so nurses, their salaries are not listed up here, but they don't get a whole lot of, what is listed up there as far as the school nurse budget? There's not a whole lot. They get money to staff their medical cabinets in their office. So it's not a whole lot of money. You are correct.
Okay, and my question is that fully funded out of general fund? There isn't a grant
For nurses.
for nurses, correct?
Correct, it's full
Okay.
general. fund.
Gotcha. Just trying to get caught back up again.
Yeah, you're good. So 10 SROs on our current budget, and that cannot be right. I did the wrong direction. It's looking at their spending side, so give me a second. Ten SROs roughly cost us like $510,000 is the budget.
Okay, thanks. That helps.
And so that's with benefits and everything, like anything so a few of those folks are retired, reemployed with us. And so we do not have to pay retirement on them or basically, since they are retired, reimburse retirement for health insurance, which we had to do for many years until statute changed and it became a waiver thing that we were able to apply for. But we do still have, I believe it's 3. I'd have to look at the individuals, but I'm pretty sure it's three of our 10 that we do pay retirement on, and then they have taken our insurance. So, so there are a few that we have extra costs on than we do others, but it cost kind of averages out to about $50,000 an SRO with everything. So looking at the expenditures, just to kind of summarize this last page that you all have in front of you, is after all the different categories, our total expenditures that we would use purchase orders on, our current year sitting right now, I don't know why it won't let me make that bigger, but is 6.8 million. And I've gone through and cut as best as I possibly can, looking at historical averages and knowing what things are going to have to be paid out, down to 6.3. And that's with already cutting some monies this school year as it is. I mean, when we started this budgeting cycle, we were more than the 6.8. So I've already gone through and cut a little bit, just with the budget that the board tasked me to go through and do some of those things. You can see our contingency sitting at 4.7 million right now, and budgeting out everything and beginning balance next year, it is down to 4.3. And so overall, going between the 2 years, we are cutting that $955,000 out of the budget. So salaries, you can see right there, on behalf payments, just so you all know, on behalf payments are an entry that we just have to book both on the revenue and expense side as a number passed down to us through the retirement system and the KDE that are paying our health benefits on behalf of our district. So that's not an actual in and out of monies to our district. Like, we don't actually get that cash and then spend it back out. Those are on behalfs. But we're required to put them in. So that's typically where we've been averaging the last couple of years, is right at that 13 million mark. And then payroll expenditures between the 2 years, just with the attrition of staff with many years of experience leaving us, that would be high on our budget, to bringing in new staff that are lower on our budget. And then just that, with all that being said, and step raises and all that, it actually flushes out to being almost a $200,000 decrease in salaries and benefits with that turnover of staff. Still keeping, all of this is still staffing our current allocation we have right now this school year. There's been no changes to that in this budget as of right now. So that's earlier when we were talking that 600,000, me saying really kind of the only area to look at is our staffing at this point, and all areas, our staffing allocation, plus maybe some of our district positions that we have increased over the years. So that's something that a cabinet team is going to sit down in the next couple of weeks before we come back in February, and as a group with our superintendent's guidance, try to figure out what to present to you all come February with how all the numbers are sitting. But here's a breakdown of all those payroll categories. You've got your certified staff, your classified staff. We have our athletic stipends. We have instructional stipends. We have certified subs, classified subs, the extra overtime, which typically is mostly in our transportation area with all the extra trips and everything they have that they do in that area. Those employees are only 6-hour-a-day employees. So anything, you know, till they hit the overtime mark is considered extra, that 2 hours to the 8-hour day for a whole week of 40 hours. But so it kind of just depends on how their work schedule falls. And this is our budget right now, and this is what I'm projecting the budget to be. We're trying to, again, cut funds where we can and looking at historical averages. So that's where those numbers have come from. Sick leave payout, that is where we pay out any days left sick leave to folks who retire from us. We pay 30% out for those folks who retire from our district. And then this is the benefits on that stuff. So that's how we fall out with payroll and expenditures. Are there any other additional questions in that area? So at this point, we are deficient. So we've pretty much talked about the areas of what we can do. But just payroll flushes out to be almost 88% of our budget at this point. And that's pretty high. You want to keep that more at the 80-20 mark. So we are a little heavy on the salary benefits side right now that we need to look at. So the budget just kind of justifies all the conversation we're having. That's where it is showing. So Fund 51 is our food service account. And this is such a hard area, and I think Miss Becky is on here, for us to even make projections on because of the COVID situation we're in right now. I mean, they're not operating at their regular functionality at this point. And so to project what they even think next year is going to be is really difficult, other than knowing we're going to have another loss this year in food service. So just kind of looking at that, here's a quick summary of those accounts. And we really just only adjusted beginning balance. And it was kind of looking at like where her revenue stands right now at 50% of the year gone. She's really only collected about 30% of what her budget, what we thought. So taking that into consideration and taking, you know, thinking if that's how it's going to continue the rest of the school year, that percentage decrease, whereas she typically would have been at 50% collection at this point, taking that off the beginning balance, saying we're going to lose that much money at the end of the year. And it could possibly be more than this, but this is just kind of where we're at this moment, saying almost 153,000 down going into next school year. So just making those adjustments on the expense side too to make that balance out. Basically, going into this school year, not knowing that it was going to be a COVID school year and we thought we were going to be operating normal, she was looking at actually bringing on permanent floating positions instead of hiring subs. Because again, it is really hard to get people who want to sub at this level of a job and pay. And so she was trying to make it easier on her staff to just, okay, I have full-time people, I can move them around as I need to move them around. But with the situation, that did not occur. So the working budget that we're in right now is, of the 1.3 you're seeing in salaries right there, is including those people. It's including staff that she was going to try to attempt to do that with this year, but then she did not due to the situation. So backing up and just kind of being conservative again, she said, let's pull those off. Let's just staff at what I have to staff at. We'll sub as we need to sub. And so, you know, that actually made her payroll go down substantially. You see that 187,000. And just having some very experienced ladies retire that had years of experience have now left and retired. So taking that into consideration and just not budgeting full-time subs as originally thought, we're going to be cutting almost 153,000 from food service. So again, come May, we'll have almost the whole year completed and we'll be able to give you all some more firm numbers than what we're giving you right now. But that is Fund 51, and that is just a summary of everything I just said to you all. Any questions with food service? So the next two accounts are capital outlay and building fund, and I'm not going to spend hardly any time on that because they are exactly the same as we are right now. The SEEK allocation is the same, so these numbers are the same. Nothing has really changed there, other than the property dollars, knowing it's going up 1.5%. That increases your property, that then puts the 10 cents in to our building fund. So just so you know what the equivalent as of the last tax reports to get, we have 2 nickels in our district. That equivalent is actually 11.4 cents we're putting over. It's not an exact 10 cents, the way it falls out. So those are on the tax reports. You'll get all this information in regards to taxes and how we do tax rates come August. That is always the month that we deal with tax rate, is in August. Fund 400 is our debt service. And so we have these bonds, and our debt service schedule is just built from those bonds and all the payments. So I put that out there for you so you could see this is what I work with through the year of making sure we get all of our bond payments paid. And so these were the capital dollars we have available to pay our bonds. And then we actually, from those capital dollars, are spending 4.1 of the roughly 4.5 million we have to spend. And then we have on the general fund, all of our KISTA bonds, which are for buses, and then portions of our energy bonds are also funded by the local side, right at $543,000 that we spend in debt on the general fund. So that is where we stand. You will get the tentative budget. Tentative school allocations must be presented to the councils by March 1st. So we will be talking staffing allocations next month, February. You'll get the tentative budget in May, as well as the final staffing allocations are going to be in April because they have to go to the board, the SBM councils, by May 1st. So you'll get staffing allocation the next couple meetings. Then we'll be into the tentative budget, and then the working budget is not till next September. So we're still a good piece away from that. But there's no questions. That is all I have.
Anybody have any questions for Miss Alicia?
Thank you. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
All right, then I need a motion for approval of the 2021-2022 draft budget.
Just that it's been reviewed. It doesn't, it's not an approval, it's just it's a.
It says
motion
review
that's been
and approval.
Yeah, but the motion is just that you need a motion and a second that you all have reviewed the budget and it has been presented to you.
Okay.
I make a motion that we reviewed the budget 2021-22 draft budget.
We reviewed and we reviewed. Motion by Mr. Tolby. I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. Beat you to it.
Motion by Ms. Richardson, second by Ms. Considine. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned at 8:21.
Thank you, Alicia. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Y'all have a good night. Hey, Paul,
Yes.
do we have a meeting time set for next week or a date?
I'd have to ask Arlene. I'm not sure. If she has, she's not sent it to me. It's not on, let me check my calendar. I don't think she's put it on my calendar yet.
Okay.
She had only talked to one or two board members.